Hey everyone, this is Mike. For now, a very quick video going over some of the balance changes that are coming in patch 5.2, which is launching in about 1.5 hours from me making this video. So by the time that the video is up, the patch is most likely going to be live. Now, in the preliminary patch notes when I was doing that video, I did say that I would make a follow-up video when the job balance changes were out, so here we are. Now, this is also the first video of today. There's gonna be two more later down the line, which the first one is gonna be about crafting stuff for if you want to make your own crafting gear, and then tonight, hopefully, I'll also have the POV of the first turn of the raid as well. So, let's get into it. Warrior Shake It Off has been buffed from 12% to 15%. Now, this is the base shield that you're going to be giving out, meaning that if you're going to be shaking off buffs like Raw Intuition, Vengeance, Thrill of Battle, then you're still going to be able to make that shield 2% stronger. I was expecting Warriors to get some change in form of maybe its inner release being changed or some potencies or something like that, because Warrior is a little bit behind the other tanks when it comes to doing damage. But on the other hand, I did talk at length about how much of a utility tank Warrior is when it comes to the amount of healing that they are providing. So them going even further down the path of Warrior being a utility tank, I think could be a really cool thing, because then basically Warrior is that tank that provides a lot of healing, provides a lot of shielding through the new Shake It Off now, rather than just being the big DPS tank that it always used to be in the previous expansion. So Shake It Off being stronger, don't really think it was a necessary change, but it's basically going to make it more of a utility tank than it already is. Now, Black Mage, Foul, potency reduction for the first enemy is, well, for the second enemy, and further is now fixed at 25%. That means that I think when it comes down to 2 targets, Foul is a little bit less worth it now, but when it comes to AoEing big packs of mobs, Foul is now going to be better. So it's mainly a change to make it stronger in dungeons. I think this is a slight nerf from what the old Foul used to be on 2 targets, but in most cases this is not really going to affect you too much in raid scenarios. The only scenarios where it's really going to affect you is in Ultimate, in the Alexander Ultimate, and as well as in one of the new Savage fights where you're fighting both Garuda and Ifrit. Cleaving with Foul is going to be a little bit less strong, but better for dungeons. You can see why they made the change, because it is basically easier to see when it would be worth it rather than not. So Foul change, it's okay, mainly for dungeons, not so much for raiding. Small nerf there. Summoner, Bio and Miasma got 5 potency taken off of all of their stuff. So for the damage over time effect of Bio, just 5 of there. And then when it comes to Miasma, both the on-hit application and then also the damage over time has also been nerfed by 5. Now, when it comes down to Summoner, it was a little bit overtuned in the previous patch, making it so strong that in some cases it would just be stronger than a Black Mage, which I think Black Mage should be king. And I didn't really want a repeat of the previous expansions where Black Mage just wasn't run because Summoner was too strong and then also had that Resurrection available to it. So them nerfing it a little bit, I think, was a good call. And this is mainly also on their dots, meaning that they're mainly looking at the 2 targets fights, but because Summoner is really strong when you can have 2 dots, like both of your dots on 2 targets applied. And seeing how we're getting another 2 target fight in the Savage tier, I think this is a pretty decent change. It's not going to make you feel so much worse when it comes down to like how much damage that you're doing, but it's just going to be a very small nerf. And then of course together with this, they're buffing Red Mage, which was the one that was lacking in damage a fair bit. So it's going to see that Summoner and Red Mage should be a lot closer together now, but still Summoner shouldn't be too far away from Black Mage because it's only a very minor nerf. So then the Red Mage buffs are as follows. Flash is going to be having a 20 potency increase, Contra 6th as well, together with no longer reducing the damage drop-off that you get from using it on AoE, so it's going to be really strong in dungeons. And when it comes to 2 target fights, you're just going to be doing 400 potency to both targets rather than having a damage drop-off, so it's going to be good and help it a little bit in, for example, Ultimate, and again Garuda and Ifrit from this Savage tier. So pretty decent change there when it comes to their AoE. And then Enhanced Jolt, this is a passive, so it's going to be increasing the Ver Thunder and the Ver Arrow potency by 20 as well. These 2 skills are used a lot, so this is a pretty decent buff to their kit overall. Flash is something that you use a lot. Contra 6th, you use that a decent amount as well. That being not only stronger on single target, but also much better now for AoE. And then having both your Thunder and Arrow skill, which is probably the one that you use the most in like the whole fight, I believe. So those being stronger should see a pretty decent buff to the damage that Red Mage is going to be doing. These buffs and the nerf to Summoner is pretty much enough for me to now say and go take it into Savage, because I do think that they're going to be much closer together now. The damage gap was, I think, about 1000 DPS or something like that back when it came to like the previous raid tier. So I think with these changes, Summoner slight nerf, Red Mage a pretty okay buff, I think they should be a lot closer now, and is basically making me want to play Red Mage, because I was like, I want to play Red Mage, so I was just hoping that the buffs were going to be good enough, and looking at them right now, I think they are. And then last but not least, White Mage Flatus Misery. This is the Blood Lily basically. Same thing as they did with Foul, potency reduction after the first enemy now fixed at 25%, meaning again, not as good when it comes down to 2-target fights, I believe, but when it comes down to dungeons and stuff, it's going to be much, much stronger. And then, of course, small change as well, the meditation gauge for Samurai has been adjusted, so you now have those 3 meditation stacks on your job gauge. I think this was a huge change, well, huge change, a really good change, which I talked about as well in a previous video, where I was like, well, if only those weren't on your buff bar but on your job gauge, and I think this looks pretty slick as well, so really good change over here. Kind of curious to see how this will look in Simplified, because I use Simplified for most of my my HUD UI stuff. But that's pretty much gonna be it. Those are the job changes. I think they are overall pretty decent. Shake It Off, questionable change, but it is what it is. Black Mage and White Mages is kind of sad for when you're doing raiding. But when it comes down to dungeons, this is a pretty nice change. Summoner slight nerf, still going to be really strong, don't worry about it too much. Red Mage, pretty decent buffs. We're gonna have to wait and see, of course, until ACT comes out and that people can finally get like best in slot and get stuff on farm, to see how much the difference is actually going to be in between these two now, but I think they're at least going to be much, much closer than they are in the current patch, which of course is the one that is not going to come out in an hour. So those are the changes for 5.2. I think they're pretty decent. And then of course later today we'll have those 2 other videos talking about the crafting gear, basically sharing my macros, that kind of stuff, and so you can see what you can make your own gear as well. And then later down the line, E5 Savage POV hopefully as well. So that's gonna be it for me for now. I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.